Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to provide 6 easy tips and tricks to tell whether your Pokemon cards are real or fake. Let's get into it. The video will begin with more obvious sort of things to look out for, and then as this video progresses I'll start to talk about harder things to look out for, things that are maybe a bit less obvious. And so yeah, be sure to stick around to the end to see all the tips that I have, and hopefully this is helpful. So the first tip that I have is obvious spelling errors. So remember, if it is an English card, there should only be one kind of spelling for the name. So I don't know what a Lation is. This is clearly a English card, but the spelling is incorrect. Same with a Chimehar. Like, what is a Chimehar? This is supposed to be a Chimchar. But these things are obvious to look out for, but upon first look, this doesn't look too bad for a Pokemon card. But then, so just by looking at the name, it becomes obvious that this is a fake card, despite, the other spelling being fine. Same with this card. So yeah, although different languages might have different sort of names for the Pokemon, the English cards should all have the same kind of name. And if you're really unsure, you can also search up like this card, for example, on eBay or Google, and you should see actual, mostly genuine results on eBay for this Pokemon card. And you can always compare your cards to the ones on eBay if you're not sure. So tip number 2 is the glossiness of a card and sort of the holo foil. So this is supposedly a reverse holo. Usually it's not the entire card that is holo, and a lot of fake cards are often really shiny, as you can see here. I have an example of a real card. Basically these two cards should be fairly similar. I think what this card is trying to replicate is something like this. Usually it's not the Pokemon that's holo, but the outside that's holo for this type of generation. However, with this card you can see that the entire card is holo foil for a card that's a sort of basic Pokemon, which usually isn't the case. Of course there's caveats, but I think the main thing you got to look out for is just, you see this holo foil from the real card is a lot more sort of clean. It's less glossy, less reflections. But I feel like this one just looks really fake to begin with. It's hard to describe. I think aside from the fonts and the name of the Pokemon, I think just the holo foil. So a lot of them are very shiny. Like if you go on Etsy or some of those Amazon lots, you can see a lot of those fake cards, which with just the holo foil is just like a kind of one-dimensional sticker almost. It's there's no depth to it. There's no sort of patterning to it. It's just simply very shiny, and it looks like a sort of sticker. So the third tip that I have is that when you see this holo foil kind of printed onto the card like this, so these are supposed to be all holo rares, and I will show the actual real Pokemon cards in a pop-up window. So these are obviously the fake ones. So what they do is they probably take an image of a real card and just scan on the holo foil. So this is, I guess, what the holo pattern is supposed to look like in the real card. But instead of actually having the holo, they just kind of printed on the little patterning. So, I'll show a real card from the same kind of generation. So this is the fake one. And then if we take a look at the real card, the holo is clearly not printed on. It's a very beautiful, I think what they're trying to print is these actual like holo little dots, Cosmo pattern. So the real ones will obviously glisten and light up. It's clearly kind of pops out of the card rather than just a flat kind of print to it. So do be aware of this. If your Pokemon card is holo and it doesn't actually have any kind of holo pattern to it, then you'll know it's fake. Whereas the real ones will obviously be more clean, and the holo will pop out a bit more. So this is actually not the best example, just because this Pokemon card isn't super, it's a dark holo, so it doesn't stand out as much. But obviously, even if you take some of the other cards like this one, you can definitely see the holo is there. It's very obvious. But with the fake ones, it's literally just not present at all. So my fourth tip is looking at the back of a Pokemon card. So this one, it does look pretty real, honestly. Like this card did fool me at first. It's very subtle, especially for these non-holo cards. It's hard to tell. And this is a real card. So usually the back is a lot more, the contrast is there. You do have this nice dark blue. And you can really see the Pokemon, as well as what I like to look at is sort of the color difference between the borders. You see here, you see this texture. It's very, it pops out a lot more. Whereas if you look at the back of a fake one, or it just looks so flat, so there's no contrast between this border around the card. I think that's a sure way to tell. Also note that a lot of fake cards are also off-centered. As you can see with this one here, they do, this one's not too bad, but I think what you can really see here is the back is off-centered, but just the fact that it's so glossy in the back, you see the light, you see how it kind of like gets reflected very nicely, and it's too shiny as well. But the real one is a lot less. You see the reflection isn't as much. And if you look really in depth here, you do see more contrast with this card rather than this card. And back is another very easy way to tell if your card is real or fake. Here's another example. You see this card is also off-centered, but the back is just super, like, it's super, I don't know how to describe it. It's like bendable. It's very, the sound that it makes doesn't sound very real. It just sounds like a piece of plastic. Whereas this one doesn't make that sound as much. This is another example of the holo cards that I showed earlier. You can see this nice contrast with the border of the card as well as the sort of middle parts of the card. I just like to see this border part, and just to make sure that the contrast is there and the yellow is there from the Pokemon logo. Whereas this one, you can see it's a bit more fainted off. And again, this contrast is very poor, from the border to the middle of the card. And this was the fake Chimchar, or Chimhar, should I say. And the fifth example I want to point out is the font. So do take note, like look at the fonts for these 90 HP cards. So these are both Diamond and Pearl Pokemon cards. This one's the real one. And right off the bat, you can kind of see that this one isn't as clean. You can really see from their abilities. This is already kind of fuzzy, and real Pokemon cards should be very clean, very well written. Whereas this one, some of the spacing is off. You can really tell that this is smaller in font than these ones. So that's another very sure way to tell. And the spacing of the attacks, the damages, are off too. You can see this one is a lot more well spread out. The spacing is also very important between the words. This one is, it's not too bad, but there are some cards I'll show in a bit that's the spacing is all over the place. And so this is what I think is a fake card. And the real one just looks very much well presented overall. And other details such as the energies. So look at this. This is the real one, and this is the fake one. And these are both from, supposedly from the same generation, Diamond and Pearl. So that should take into account any variances between different sets. But yeah, again, you can see that this energy just looks so fake compared to this one. The black star is a lot smaller, whereas this one kind of touches the edges of the white circle. So do keep that in mind. Font is not too bad. It's fairly close. It's closer than the other cards, but again, I think just looking at these sort of energy symbols is a good way to tell. You can see that this one is quite off-center as well. This fighting energy here, you can see that it's not very clear, but then this real card, the fighting energy, is right in the center and very clearly visible. So all the tips I've given so far, I think you should use sort of in parallel with each other to help you determine if your card is real or fake. So some cards may exhibit many of the traits that I mentioned, the typos, the font, the glossiness, whereas some other cards, which I find some of these more modern cards, it's a very hard to tell, I think. Upon first look, I didn't actually notice anything wrong with these. They actually looked half decent. You know, the spelling was okay. The energy wasn't too bad. And the back, although it's kind of glossy, but it wasn't like, you know, it didn't stand out. It wasn't as bad of a fake as some of these older generations. So guys, do be on the lookout that the newer cards are getting better at making fakes. So this brings us to our last point, and this is one of the best ways to tell. It's the most accurate ways. However, the downside is this method is destructive. What I mean by this is if you do this test, which is the rip test, you'll basically lose your card. And you know, let me demonstrate. So this is a real Pokemon card. I'm just gonna sacrifice an energy card. When you rip it, you do see this black line printed in the sort of the middle of the card. You can see it more visibly here. So this kind of acts as a way to verify if your cards are real. So any real card should have this black ink across the middle of the ripped region. However, that's not the case with these fake cards. So with these fake cards, if you do rip it, you see this clear white line. You know, there's literally no black line near it. You know, I ripped these two cards almost in the identical way. This real one clearly has this black line, whereas this fake one does not. And same with the top piece here as well. Real, fake. So yeah, guys, I hope this is helpful. Please let me know if I missed anything. You know, these fakes are getting better and better. So I do want everyone to be on the lookout. Don't get, you know, I hate scammers. I would hate if that happened to you guys. So please let me know what you guys think. If you guys like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Do feel free to check out my affiliate links in the description below. They lead to websites that I trust and use frequently. And yeah, I'll see you guys in another video. Peace out, guys.